Okay. So, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Denny Kukler, and I serve as the Neighbor Network Coordinator at First English Lutheran Church. And the Neighbor Network is a relatively new program. We've been working at this for about a year, and it focuses on helping members of First English to live out individually and collectively their call to love and serve our neighbors. And we define our neighbor as anyone other than ourselves. So, we've worked on projects in our physical neighborhood, in the community, and across the world. So it's a pretty awesome program. I really, really love it. And I think that Ruby's Pantry is going to be a great fit under the Neighbor Network program. So um, as we get going, if there's something that is just burning that you really want to ask and stop us, that's okay. I can't see everyone. Carrie Kiekefer is on and she's going to help kind of co-host. So if you do need to stop us and ask a question, you can either use the raise your hand feature, which you find by clicking on the participants, and then you click yourself raise hand, or you can just wave your hands wildly. That's what I usually do if I want someone to answer my question. So let's go ahead and get started. So for those of you who aren't familiar, what is Ruby's Pantry? So Ruby's Pantry is a faith-based nonprofit that was started in 2003. They distribute overstock food from corporate donors to families in Minnesota and Wisconsin. Ruby's Pantry partners with churches and other faith-based organizations that are willing to host a once a month food distribution. So basically, what they do is they look for sites where they are able to hold food distributions, and people drive up or come in and pick up their shares. Tonight, I'm going to share with you how I think that we can host a Ruby's Pantry at First English in Appleton with the help and support of community partners and local churches. So I'm first going to start out by sharing a little bit more about Ruby's Pantry. Ruby's Pantry is for anyone who eats. There is no income or residency requirement. They like to say that if you eat, you qualify. And the way that you participate is that you come with your $20 donation, and for that, you will receive upwards of $150 to $200 worth of groceries. Those donations are used to cover the operational costs for Ruby's Pantry. So they have warehouses and their own trucks, and so that covers that cost. But also, they give back 10% of the donations to the host site. And I'll talk a little bit more about benevolence in a little bit. But basically, all of that goes back into the community. And we don't have to worry about where will we get the food, because Ruby's Pantry takes care of all of that. All the food is donated by corporate food donors. Now, I mentioned that there's the 10% benevolence that stays with the host site. So just as an example, there's a Ruby's Pantry in Greenville, and monthly they serve 400 guests. So that's $800 a month that they have to use for benevolence. Now, sure, they use some of that to cover some of their operational costs, but that's a lot of money to go back into the community. And so one example of how they have used that benevolence money is that they partner with another local pantry, and that pantry takes the remnant items that are left over after an event. Well, this particular pantry really wanted to be able to take all of the things, but they didn't have a way to keep the frozen foods frozen. And so what the Greenville folks did is they bought them a large freezer. They bought them a chest freezer, and it was a win-win. The leftover food from the event could go to that pantry, and they could use it. So that was just an example of how the money stays within the community and it benefits other organizations. So as I mentioned before, Ruby's Pantry serves anyone who eats. There are no income or residency requirements. And in our community, the area that a Ruby's Pantry would serve, the food insecurity or a lack of access to sufficient quantity of affordable and nutritious food for an active lifestyle is around 10%. So now when we compound that with the fact that with the Wisconsin Supreme Court's repealing of the statewide health emergency and the federal funding that had been allocated for SNAP benefits, many low income senior citizens who had been receiving $204 a month for food, they're going to see their SNAP benefits drop down to $16. And that's according to the Hunger Task Force Director, Sherry Tussler. So this is a great It's not a great. This is an opportunity for us to be able to serve our neighbors, to help people stretch their grocery budget. And really, when we work with Ruby's Pantry, all we have to do is show up. There isn't a high barrier to participate. You just have to have a desire to serve other people. Like I mentioned before, all the food is sourced for us and it comes on a trailer from Ruby's Pantry. We are not at all responsible for procuring the food. On average, each guest will receive around $150 worth of food for their $20 donation. And the items do vary from month to month, but they always include a shelf-stable items and also frozen and refrigerated items. So just as an example, this month, the Ruby's Pantries are offering guests meat, liquid eggs, pizza, frozen potatoes, and the list goes on and on. And I want to share with you that these are not expired items. These are not seconds. This is food that you actually want to eat. When I was in Greenville, I expected that I was going to come across a lot of just like canned beans. But in reality, I saw a lot of organic food, a lot of gluten-free foods. There were many specialty items. And you might be thinking, well, that's great, but I don't drink milk. I don't eat meat. But what I would say to you is that you may not, but I know you know someone who does. And that's the whole thing behind Ruby's Pantry and their idea of benevolence. Let's say that you take a share, you either can't go through it all or there are things that you're not interested in. You can share that back out with your neighbors. And so it just helps to keep that process growing. So why would we start a Ruby's Pantry in downtown Appleton? Especially why at First English? We're 2 blocks from the Salvation Army. Well, Appleton, particularly a site on a bus line, does meet an unmet need from Ruby's Pantry. The folks in Greenville tell me that they are asked every month, isn't there something in Appleton? Isn't there something that's closer in Appleton? And what I hear from the warehouse folks is that they actually have requests for people who they say, well, I'm on a bus line. I can't get to Greenville. Is there not anything in Appleton that I could participate in? And while you know that Appleton has a system of the small free pantries, those are only non-perishable food items. I mean, there's a great example of that from our friends over at First United Methodist. They have their blessing box, and that is a beautiful example of sharing food into the community. The neighborhood around First English, it's an average low income and there's no grocery stores. And so, like I said before, while there are options like Salvation Army and St. Joe's, Ruby's Pantry gives people the opportunity to participate by offering that donation. It fills the gap for those families who are looking to just stretch their grocery dollar. And I really want to reiterate this. If a family would come to Ruby's Pantry and they could not financially participate, no one is turned away. That I saw an example of that actually while I was in Greenville. A family came through and they wanted to buy 2 shares, so $40, and he only had a $50 bill. And so he gave it to the registration person and she said, I'm sorry, I can't make change for you. And he said, no, don't worry about it. Just keep it and that's fine. The next family that came through only had $10. But they were covered. They said, don't worry about it. You're covered. Like, you have been blessed, and take your box and go. And so it just shows how things work out that way in a very positive way for people. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about how this would actually work if we have Ruby's Pantry in downtown Appleton. I need to move my people out of the way here. So what we're looking at right here is an aerial view of our downtown site. This is First English Lutheran Church. This is Drew Street. This is North Street. So, whoops, sorry about that. So with COVID, we cannot bring large groups of people inside right now. We all know that. And so we are planning that we would run a Ruby's Pantry as an outside event. The idea being that people will come into our parking lot and we would actually queue up the cars in this parking lot right here. This is where registration would take place. This is where we would collect money if folks are not pre-registered. So we would have 3, potentially 4 lines. From there, we would bring the cars into 2 lines and they would go across Ida Street and then underneath right here, stopping 3 different times where volunteers would load their food into the car. And then once they have received all of their items, then they would exit out and turn right on Drew Street and go on their way. What we're trying to do is avoid blocking traffic. Like I mentioned before, in Greenville, they're hosting 400 families, 400 cars in 2 hours. And while we have no idea how many people will actually participate in Ruby's Pantry to start with, the folks at Ruby's Pantry are telling me that they project us to start with at least 300 cars coming through. And this is not super easy to see, but this is where the trailer would drop off the food and we would unload the food right here so that it could go into the cars.
Hey, Denny.
Yeah.
While we're talking about just the process, someone had a question and said, if someone shows up having come on a bus,
Yep.
Can they walk through the lines, or how would that process work?
You bet. And that was literally my next line. So somebody's just one step ahead of me. We do expect that we'll serve walk-up guests. And so there will be another area, and I don't have that completely fleshed out yet, where exactly those folks where we would have them come through. But we certainly would have an area that is specifically for folks who are not in vehicles. They will not be in the car line.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. So I know I'm going to really sound like a broken record here, but I really do believe that, oh, I see one more question here from Gary. Gary, I am going to get to your question here in 1 second about the unloading of the truck. Okay. That's my favorite thing to talk about, believe me. So like I said, I know I sound like a broken record, but the whole process for hosting a Ruby's Pantry is really so easy. All we have to do is show up. The folks at Ruby's Pantry in their office, they've got this all figured out. They've been doing it for 18 years. We really just need people. And there are going to be 2 different types of volunteers that we're going to need. We're going to need what we're calling a core team, which is going to be more of a leadership team. And so these folks will work with me to organize and plan all of our events. We will meet probably one other time a month besides the actual event. So I'm going to just briefly go through these roles. There's a detailed PDF that outlines all of these roles on firstenglish.com. The first role is the site leader, and unless somebody wants to fight me for it, that's going to be me. That is something that it's kind of the person who oversees everything and does all the organization.
I didn't see any hands go up fighting you for that spot.
Okay, all right. All right. The other roles that are going to be on that core team are going to be a volunteer coordinator. Now, this person is going to be responsible for doing our volunteer registration and then also making sure that we have enough volunteers for each event. We're going to need somebody responsible for finance. Now, the finance person is going to help us manage our budget, and then also we'll work with the registration coordinator to collect all the funds. I'm going to come back to prayer coordinator because I want to talk about promotions coordinator first. That is a person who is going to be responsible for sharing press releases, doing social media, just getting it out into the community that we are a Ruby's Pantry host and that we are here to serve the neighborhood. The prayer coordinator is a really key role. Now, the thing about Ruby's Pantry is that this is truly a ministry. This isn't about just putting food in people's trunks as they drive by. We want to be able to connect with people. We want to be able to have relationships with people. Now, when I say that, this is not a pitch for First English. This is more of we see you, we want to be in relationship with you, we care about you. So that prayer coordinator will have a team of individuals and they'll just tap on windows and ask, how are you? Is there anything that I can pray for you for if it turns that way? But like I said, this is about building relationships. It's not just about giving food to families. So each event is going to be about 2 hours long. The distribution is about 2 hours long. There's a little bit of work to prepare for it. Depending on the number of people that come through, we're looking at between 20 and 60 events, 20 and 60 volunteers per event. Now, what I think is so awesome about Ruby's Pantry is that they really encourage all ages and families are encouraged. For those of you who know me personally, I have 2 little kids. I have a 4 and an 8-year-old, and finding opportunities for us to volunteer together as a family and to really do meaningful work, it's pretty difficult to find. So families are definitely encouraged. High school students are definitely encouraged. As long as you're over 12, you can come and volunteer on your own. Kids under 12 have to volunteer with an adult. Corporate groups and businesses are encouraged to volunteer together as a way to, for team building, and also community organizations. I know we've got some folks on the call that are from our neighborhood partners. We've got some folks from the Historic Central Neighborhood and Lawrence City Park, as well as Appleton West. Come on out with your neighbors and volunteer. And you can also participate. That's another thing to keep in mind is that you can be a volunteer and a participant of Ruby's Pantry. So here's the nitty gritty. Here's what we need. Again, we need volunteers. We need people to make this happen. We have the location. We are planning to be at the First English Lutheran Church downtown site, tentatively Monday late afternoons. Typically distributions start around 5 o'clock. We do have a couple of startup items that are needed. So I want to go back to Gary, your question, who's responsible for unloading the truck? We are. And so the thing that gives me the greatest anxiety about this whole thing is finding someone who has a forklift and is forklift certified who can help us unload those trucks. So I have a feeling that there will be someone who will respond after this and say, I know somebody. At least that's what I really hope. Some of you may have received an email from me that didn't have anything to do about Ruby's Pantry. And at the end, I say, P.S., do you know anyone with a forklift? So if you do know anyone, please send them my way. Now, again, I know I keep talking about our friends in Greenville, but as an example, they have used their benevolence money to buy a forklift. So it's just an example of how you can plan out, and we could do that. I'm hesitant to do that because this is one time a month for a couple of hours, and I think we can be a little bit more creative, and I would really rather see that money go back into the community. Other kind of startup items that we need, freezer blankets, because we are going to have items that are frozen and refrigerated, and they're going to come on the truck right before the distribution. But when you pull them off the truck, you want to leave them on the pallets, but cover them with a freezer blanket. We're going to be looking for some grocery carts to be able to easily move items, and then just like administrative and safety supplies. Woo, friends, that's a lot. Yeah. I'm going to stop sharing for a second so that I can open it up for questions and everybody can see everybody. Oh my gosh, look at all your beautiful faces. So if you have questions, you can either—
There's actually a question on the chat. Can you see the chat or do you want me to read it?
So Barb, I just talked with Salvation Army yesterday, and they do have a forklift. However, it's battery operated and for indoor use. And so even though we're only 2 blocks away, that's not really the greatest option. However, I do have to talk to my friend over at the school district because Pat at the Salvation Army mentioned that potentially they will have one that we would be able to use. What we'll need to figure out would be the liability and the insurance part of that. And Catherine, yes, I will put the volunteer description in the chat. Maybe. I'm not the most super tech savvy person. I'm not going to lie. So um, I will send it out to you in an email right after.
Jenny, it looks like somebody already popped down and put it on there. Diane, good work.
Thank you, Diane. Yes, and then Barb, the specific day and time of month, we are looking at Mondays at starting potentially at 5 o'clock. That could shift a little bit. There are only certain days that are available from Ruby's Pantry to get the trucks at First English. And with us hosting as many weddings as we do, we didn't want to have it on a Saturday morning because we did not want to run into having a trailer full of food when people are trying to have their weddings. And then Wednesday nights are pretty busy. So we think that it's going to be the first Monday of the month. Now, we don't have a time set yet for when this would start. The folks at Ruby's Pantry will train us and they will walk alongside of us for the first couple of months as we get this started. And dependent on how quickly we want to go, they can do it in 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days. So it just depends on how quickly we would want to start the program. Are families are required to pre-register for the food? So it depends on the site. You are not required to pre-register, and every site runs it a little bit differently. So in Greenville, they pre-register 300 of their 400 shares. And then they have 100 that are available for people who just walk up. So it depends on the sites. Like there are certain sites that are a little more rural that they don't register anyone. It is all just a walk up. Okay.
Are you catching this next question?
I am.
I can read them to you, Denny, if you want.
Yeah, that would be great, Carrie. That would be awesome.
You got it. So an example of how much food they might receive and be able to carry if they are walking or to carry at home is there smaller shares and a regular shares for families versus singles? Or is it just standard?
Nope, it's just standard. If someone really did have an issue with being able to take as much as the share is, we would definitely work with them on a case-by-case basis.
Okay. Do volunteers need to go through background checks or any other sort of screening? Okay.
Yep. So just like with any volunteers that participate at First English, there's a small background check that is completed on volunteers.
Okay. And then do we decide on what type of food people get, or is it a standard box?
No,
use the word.
COVID makes everything a little bit different. You get a little bit less choice with COVID because whatever comes off the truck gets put into a share and gets distributed. In a non-COVID environment, guests are able to kind of shop the distribution. And so there may be a table where they get to choose between 3 items. So not everyone's share will be exactly the same, but they're getting the same quantity of items.
Okay. One other question or one other thought that Barb had shared was we could offer ride shares. So if there is a pre-registration, it seems like that'd be a great opportunity for us to outreach in that way too.
Yep.
And oh my goodness, these questions are coming in. I didn't catch who said this. These are good. Do boxes get packed on different days other than Monday evenings, or does it all happen on Monday? Is it all in one shop?
There are different Ruby's Pantry events all over the state. And you know what, now that I'm thinking about this, I realize I skipped over a big part of one of my slides. There are Ruby's Pantries currently in Green Bay. There are 2 in Green Bay. They're right across the river from each other. Greenville. Also, there's a pantry in Denmark and Oshkosh. Those are in our kind of immediate area. So the thing about Ruby's Pantry is that you could go to Greenville on the first Saturday of the month and then come to Appleton on the first Monday of the month and then go to Green Bay when their pantry is. There is no limit to the amount of pantries that you can participate in. So if it worked for you, you could participate in more than one. And the other thing about Ruby's Pantry is that they really encourage pantries to share information about other pantries. So when we host in Appleton, we'll have like a little piece of paper that will go in with the shares, and it will talk about when these other events are. It's not, there's no concern from the folks in Greenville that we are going to take their support, their people. They're like, no, we are very happy that you want to have a pantry. We really, there's a great need.
That's great. A couple other ones, and I'm a little out of order right now, so forgive me. I'm just going to jump back.
Yep.
Somebody had contributed, Patrick did that, for those that can't carry all their food available
Mhm.
to them, maybe we could have a volunteer group assist
Totally.
with delivery. And I
Yep.
think that probably is what you're thinking too. Eventually this could build on to
Yeah.
itself.
And that's the thing too, is that I talk a lot about Greenville because we went there and we saw how they work. But the folks at Ruby's are really encouraging each site to make it their own. So we're not going to look like Greenville. We're just not. It's going to be completely different. The feel is going to be different. And so if there are things that we need to do that are a little bit different, and if that means that we need to help people get food to their homes, then we'll do that. We have the flexibility for that.
And then Denny, did you answer this? I know we jumped back. Does everything happen that day? Do the truck arrives, boxes get unloaded and reloaded and packed, or is there prep work days prior?
Everything happens that day, which
Okay.
makes this really a great volunteer experience because you show up and in 3 hours you've unloaded that truck, distributed the food, cleaned up, and you're going home. And when it's outside, we don't have to worry about tidying a building. So that's a win-win.
That's a win.
I've been asked a lot about the weather because where we live here in Wisconsin, we're chancing it. But where we're going to unload the food, we do have some coverage from our portico. And again, it's only about 2 hours and the guests are mostly in their cars. So we will have to potentially wear snow pants sometimes, but I think that it's something that we can manage.
Would the box be determined by weight? I'm not.
I don't think so. I'm not, and I don't know if this is answering the question or not, but one thing, with this trying to find a forklift, this has been the bane of my existence. I've learned more about forklifts than I ever cared to know. They can pack the pallets so that they are a certain weight and don't go over if we have a smaller or larger forklift. But in terms of the weight of the food, I don't think that there's any kind of like preset weight, and it changes every month. So some months might be more canned good heavy, other months might not be. So I don't think that there's any standard for that.
Sure. And then can you go over again, what happens with any of the leftover food?
Sure. So when you first start to host a Ruby's Pantry leaves the truck for the first 3 months. They don't leave it for 3 months on end. But they bring the truck, we take everything off. We do the best that we can to forecast how many shares we'll need, but then they'll take back whatever excess there is. After those 3 months, and we have figured out kind of what our sweet spot is and how many shares we're going to need, then they try to deliver just kind of the right amount. There's not a lot left over. And whatever is left over, because everything's coming palletized, and let's say, for example, we have 400 shares and a pallet has 412. Well, we'll have a partner organization. Right now, St. Joe's has said that they will take the leftover food. The Salvation Army right now is not open to that. But it's just a space thing. But again, they feel like that could potentially change dependent on when we start. And so they may partner with us on that as well. But Ruby's Pantry doesn't want there to be any waste. Everything should go back into the community. Now, if it's summer and we're having VBS and we've got some leftover stuff, we would probably hold it back for VBS. Or if, First United has something going on, and we could definitely, we can be flexible with where we go with what's left over.
Okay. There's a gentleman on here from Stevens Point, and so he
Yeah.
just asked some questions about, do you
Hi, Gary.
apply to be a site? To be a
Yep.
site for
So
pantry? And then also, how do you get the knowledge, and the required procedure?
So you start to live, breathe, and eat Ruby's Pantry. No, I'm just kidding. But there is a form on their website. If you go to rubyspantry.org and you go to the bottom, and Gary, you know what? Why don't I just email you that? I can email you that specific information. But basically, you just fill out your interest, and then the folks from Ruby's Pantry will call you. And if it's anything like what happened with me, you'll be on the phone for like an hour and it will just whip by. And but then when you decide that you want to, you sign a memo of understanding that you are going to host. You'd have to give a 30-day notice if you were going to stop hosting it via host site. And then they will come and help train all the volunteers. So we're not going at this, we're not going to just wing it. They're going to come with their 18 years of experience and help us to learn all the roles that we need to pull this off.
Does Ruby, we had a couple people ask about the boxes that we're speaking about. Does Ruby's Pantry provide the boxes? Do they supply those that the food goes into?
So the way that it has been working with the COVID distribution, with the outdoor distributions, you're able to use the boxes that the food comes in on the pallet. Otherwise, those are items that are typically donated by local organizations and companies, but they do not provide just like individual boxes.
Okay.
The other thing that they do in Greenville is they actually encourage folks to, if they're coming through in their cars, to put 2 empty laundry baskets in their trunk, and then they fill those.
Oh, okay. Just out of curiosity, having been to travel to other sites, do you know how long it would take to kind of get the pallets off the trucks?
I mean, I no, I know that they are there from 8 to noon. So and the distribution is 2 hours. So I don't think that it takes very long to get them off the truck. I think that the time is more once it's off the truck, counting the items and getting things organized.
So you really only need the lift for the time that
Right,
you're just off the truck.
I'd eat right. They don't have a drop gate on the trucks. I don't know why that is the case, because it seems like it literally is to just get the pallets off the truck.
Okay.
So, yeah,
Okay.
just a short amount of time.
Sarah actually asked a question that kind of ties into one that I had too.
Yeah.
She asked about, could we partner with Lawrence both to have them help serve and volunteer, but also to potentially let students know of the leftovers and allow them to take them. And that lends itself to my question. What is the age requirement for somebody to be a recipient? I know, I mean, even as somebody who's coached at like Appleton West, I know I've coached some kids who have actually been somewhat responsible for helping contribute to their family's groceries and that sort of thing. Is that something that they could access as well?
You bet. There's no age requirement. And again, their mantra is if you eat, you qualify.
Okay.
So there's no age requirements. And Lawrence is definitely on my list of people to connect with. So Sarah, if you have particular people, or if you have a connection that you could share with me. No? Okay.
That's
all right. I'm good at just being like, hey, this is my need. Who do I need to talk to?
Good try. Good effort. Yeah. Denny. You mentioned counting items. Does that mean the same number of items go into each box?
Right. So when the pallets come, they're coming in a pallet right from the warehouse. What can happen is that a pallet can potentially have like a hole in the middle. So the boxes aren't, you think that you're getting 400 of an item, but maybe you're only getting 350. So for each pallet that comes in, Ruby's just encourages you to count to make sure that you don't get into a situation where the first 100 people got this item and then the second 200-300 did not. So again, it is possible that not every share will be exactly the same, but the value of each share will be similar.
Okay. And then maybe you could just tell the group, Barb asked this and I'm curious as well.
Yeah.
You know, any fresh fruits and veggies, mostly canned, fresh meat, dairy, things that last longer, things that don't. Can you give us a glimpse as to kind of what you've seen?
So dairy for sure. They told us about apparently they had a very large surplus of ice cream that they needed to go through. Like when I say that, I mean like trailers of ice cream. But for sure, you're going to get some kind of dairy, some kind, whether that be yogurt or milk or sour cream. The vegetables are not, as I understand it, is not as readily available. And also for sites, it's tough because you don't want to give items that are not great. And then also with like, there won't be anything that is potentially perishable, like fresh meat. We would not be set up to handle for the food safety portion of that. We would not be set up for that.
Okay. Please re-enter your question in the chat if I missed it. I think we're caught up. If anyone else has any others.
Those were awesome. Thank you so much, everybody.
Denny, what's your timeline for this? Like, what's your goal? What's your hope as you see this unfold, knowing this group kind of met?
Yeah. So my hope would be the latest that we would start would be August.
Okay.
I think that June is early. I think that the beginning of July is tough because we have the 4th of July holiday. But I'm hesitant to start later than August because of the weather. And that is simply because I'd like to have a couple of these under our belts before we have to deal with snow. So what else? Anything else?
So are you hosting any more of these, or what are the next steps?
So that is it. So our next steps are that I will encourage all of you to go to firstenglish.com/Ruby's Pantry and sign up for a volunteer role if it's something that you're interested in. And that you'll see that there's a form out there that will allow you to indicate if you're interested in a core team role, if you're interested in an event volunteer role, if you have other questions or comments that you want to share with me. And talk about this with your neighbors, with your friends, and share that this is coming, right? Like this is such a great thing for our community. And I am so excited by the variety of people who are on this call. I'm kind of geeking out about it. I'm not going to lie. I just feel so touched that we have so many different organizations interested in working on this. And the last thing that, yeah.
Oh, go ahead. There's another question that popped up. First of all, if you want a direct link,
Yes.
Diane is, yep, she's the new assistant here. Right on there, you can link to the page. But two quick questions. If COVID settles down, are there plans to move it inside for pickup?
Ideally, Ruby's Pantry would like events to be held inside because they want it to be a very relational event. Our downtown site is not really the best option for that. If someone on this call would say, we would be happy to host inside and we have a space, great, let's move it there. I want to be very clear that this is not a First English ministry. This is a community event, a community ministry. And while we are very, very happy to host, we are also very happy if someone has a roof and 4 walls that we could move into.
Could it maybe be, have you considered, could it maybe be inside at a school? Have you seen any sites at schools?
Yeah, there are some sites at schools. So it would just need to be someone who would be able to accept the fact that it's a faith-based partnership. So,
Okay, sure. And then as you go on and tell us, what these next steps are, one of the
yeah,
questions that Barb had, for those of us who would maybe be on more of the advocate side and just
yeah,
interested in sharing, would you be creating a marketing toolkit for those of us who are connected with organizations that we could send out?
you bet. And there's also already, there are brochures and flyers that are available that I can definitely share. But the person who works with the promotions part of this will be working on creating all of those items.
I don't
Going
see any
once,
other hands or
turning,
questions.
no? Well, I just want to thank you. This is so great. I see, we've got folks from our neighborhood partners that are here, First United Methodist. We've got folks from um, Stevens Point, our friends down at the Episcopalian Church, First English. This is so awesome. This is just so great, and I hope that you all can get as excited about this as I am, because it's going to be pretty tough for me to unload that truck by myself. So. So I look forward to hearing from all of you. If you don't have my contact information, look for it in another email I'll send out, kind of regrouping everything. Feel free to call me, email me. If you want to Zoom, I'm open for that. We are going to shoot for the beginning of May to start our core team meetings. So to start really starting to plan and getting some dates on the books. So tentatively, those are going to be the first Thursday of the month, but it's going to depend on who's involved in that core team.
All right. Thank you so much,
Right.
Denny.
Yeah.
I just want to thank you, Danny, too. Thank you, Danny, for spearheading this, putting it together. I'm excited to be a part of it as well.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jerry. And Jerry is one of our neighborhood partners from Appleton West. So that is she is taking care of that neighborhood over there. And I just think this is so great that we can all come together. Awesome. Catherine, thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. I'm so excited about this too. You guys, I feel like I gotta chill it out here a little bit. I don't know if it's my COVID vaccine or if I'm just really excited, but I appreciate all of your time tonight, and I really am looking forward to working with all of you.
Thanks, Denny. Very
Yeah.
exciting.
All right, friends. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Great presentation. Thank you.
Yeah.
Danny.